Imagine the AI race as a car race, except on this track, every single car is worth more than $500 billion, and whoever wins gets to own the most valuable industry in human history. But predicting the winner is harder than it looks, because even though some of these companies have had almost a decade of head start, you might be surprised who's actually winning.
And Google threatens to unseat the industry's early leader, OpenAI declaring code red as the AI race intensifies.
Most people think it was OpenAI who had the first mover advantage, but that's actually wrong. Back in 2017, Google's research team published a paper called Attention is All You Need, introducing the transformer architecture, which is basically the foundation almost every major AI model has been built since then, including the ones built by every company in this race. If you didn't know, that's what T in GPT stands for. It's almost impossible to overstate how significant this paper was, and equally impossible to overstate how reckless Google's decision was to do absolutely nothing with it. In their defense, there was actually a good reason for that. If we check Google's revenue, advertising in search is the single most profitable operation they run, and so launching any kind of consumer product like a chat assistant that could search the internet in real time would have eaten directly into their ad revenue. So the logic of doing nothing is understandable, but it would prove to be a costly mistake.
ChatGPT. Maybe you've heard of it. If you haven't, then get ready.
In November 2022, OpenAI released ChatGPT, officially joining the race. By the end of January 2023, it had reached 100 million users, making it the fastest growing consumer app in the history of the internet and the most talked about piece of tech in the world. And that's exactly what put OpenAI ahead of Google on the track. Despite their initial success, inside the company things were anything but smooth, and that drama would eventually create the other two companies racing on the track today. The first was Anthropic, founded by a group of researchers who left OpenAI over disagreements on safety, and the second was xAI, founded by Elon in 2023 after losing a power struggle to Sam Altman. Although Anthropic and xAI joined much later, each one found a way to close the gap rather quickly. And that comes down to the strategy they chose. Anthropic made the smartest move of the four, going after the customers who have deep pockets, namely enterprises and developers. The bet was big companies would pay real money for AI as long as they could trust it with their data, and developers would pay for a model reliable enough to build production software on top of. That strategy worked well, taking Anthropic from 1 billion to over 30 billion in annualized revenue in just 2 years, making it the fastest growing company in history. For comparison, reaching 30 billion took Microsoft 28 years. And if you're not impressed yet, let me show you another chart. At the current rate of growth, Anthropic is projected to overtake OpenAI by the end of this year, which puts them right up there with the other two leaders. Not far behind, xAI has been picking up steam as well. Their strategy comes down to using everything else Elon owns to its advantage, starting with Grok being plugged in directly into X, which gave them a built-in distribution network nobody else can replicate. Second, Tesla provides them with real-world data for training in robotics and autonomous driving, which is likely to be the next big wave of AI adoption. And finally, the SpaceX merger, which gave xAI an entirely new angle, because now they could build orbital data centers and eventually run AI training in space. We'll break this down in just a minute. That said, the competition is not getting any easier. After a rough start, Google has seen some major wins by pivoting to multimodality. Is the idea that a single model should be able to read text, look at images, watch videos, and respond to all of them at once. And Google is in a unique position to train models like this because they own YouTube, which gives them access to an ocean of video data nobody else has. The only one of the four whose strategy ended up being an absolute disaster is OpenAI. They tried to make the most of their lead by doing way too many things at once. They pushed ChatGPT into every market they could find, they launched a video generating tool that costs a fortune to run and ended up being used mainly for memes, and finally, they committed to over 1.4 trillion in infrastructure spending they can't currently afford. Despite all those strategic miscalculations, look what's happened over the past year. ChatGPT is still the AI most people go to. That kind of reach is the single biggest asset OpenAI has, but it's not as much of an advantage as it might sound, and here's why. Most of us have been trained since the dawn of the internet to go to Google whenever we want to know something. And now Gemini lives directly inside Google search and has become just as good as ChatGPT for everyday tasks, which means there's no real reason to bother switching anymore. And that's why I'd argue Google has fully caught up with OpenAI in this race. In fact, I could argue Anthropic has caught up too, because Claude specifically is the AI product serious people use for high-stakes work. The only one still lagging behind on the product side is Grok. It was supposed to be this AI that pulls together real-time information from millions of people arguing in public on X, but today is better known for going completely off the rails multiple times. So it doesn't seem like Grok will ever catch up, unless we look at one more thing. This is a data center. It's where the actual work of AI happens, training the models and running them for users. The first thing to note is they are massive, some of the bigger ones covering a third of Central Park. Second, they use enormous amounts of energy to run, and third, they pull millions of liters of water from local rivers and reservoirs to keep the servers cool. Because of those three limiting factors, and because data centers are extremely unpopular with the communities they get built next to, 3 of the 4 companies in this race have a massive problem when it comes to compute. OpenAI, for instance, last year announced a $500 billion plan to build the largest AI infrastructure project in history. But a year later, almost none of it has been built, because they can't secure enough electricity to run any of it at full capacity. Anthropic has it even tougher, because not only do they not have the capacity OpenAI has, they rely entirely on external partners like Amazon, and that supply could be cut off at any moment. Google's problem might not be obvious at first, but the data centers they already own are running near the limit serving search, YouTube, and the rest of their products. So shifting any of it to AI would mean breaking the products that actually pay for all of it. And this brings us to how xAI might get ahead. If you've been keeping up with AI news lately, you've probably heard talks about moving data centers into space. The idea sounds crazy, until you realize space gives you unlimited solar power 24/7 and a baseline cold temperature from the vacuum. And because SpaceX is the only company in the world that can get a satellite into orbit in the cheapest and most efficient way, xAI is the best positioned to actually pull this off. And if they do, they can not only catch up but potentially get ahead of the other 3. However, this is a highly speculative, complicated and risky idea for reasons I talk about in more details in this video on space data centers.